Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Diamond, in late May, you told stakeholders to brace yourself for an economic hurricane. What's your current outlook along those lines?
So I think you've heard the American consumer is still in actually rather good shape. They're spending money 10% more than prior years. They have a good balance sheet. Their debt balances are low. Their confidence levels are going up. Jobs are plentiful. I think it's a good thing that wages have gone up for the lower end. That's all the good news. That's being met by other forces, which we don't know the full effect of. That's war in Ukraine, oil prices going up, interest rates going up, inflation, and the worst possible outcome is stagflation. And so those things will absolutely cause a slowdown in the economy, at one point, increase unemployment, and we don't know the full outcome.
In your opinion, what is the most urgent regulatory reform that this committee can make in terms of improving our nation's economic and financial well-being?
I think when you're looking at something like inflation, there are really three things to do. Rates will have to go up. That will reduce demand. I think spending less money reduces demand, and we should also focus on the supply side. And there are evidence in certain areas, mortgages, small business regulation, some capital regulation, but regulations could actually reduce the burden on business and get people to hire more people and produce more products and services.
What role did monetary and fiscal policy, especially the Fed's financing of congressional deficit spending, play in our spiraling inflation, particularly in food and shelter prices and other components of the core CPI?
To give credit where credit is due, I think the government did the right thing early on in the crisis to take dramatic action to reduce the pain of the pandemic. Remember, unemployment went from 4% to 15% in 3 or 4 months. But since then, we've spent, in total, fiscal spending has been $6 trillion, 30% of the GDP, which is bigger than any time in history other than World War II. And QE probably went on for too long, another $3 or $4 trillion. And we're paying the price of too much fiscal and monetary stimulus. I don't want to second guess all the people doing that. That might have been predictable at the time. They're taking the right action to reverse it. But I don't think you can spend $6 trillion and not expect inflation. And so I don't like to cry over spilled milk. Let's do the things we've got to do to fix all that and then move forward, grow the economy, which is the best way to reduce inflation and help all of our citizens.
How likely do you believe it is that the Fed will achieve a so-called soft landing, reducing inflation without an unacceptable decline in economic activity?
I do not like to make forecasts. I don't think I've ever seen anyone forecast the future properly. I look at probabilities. I think there's a chance, not a big chance, a small chance of a soft landing. There's a chance of a mild recession, a chance of a harder recession. And because of the war in Ukraine, I think and the uncertainty that causes in global energy supply and food supply, there's a chance it could be worse. And I think policymakers should be prepared for the worst so we take the right actions if and when that happens.
Are ESG ratings useful in terms of supplying investors with enough information to make intelligent trade-off decisions among economic rates of return and environmental, social, and governance objectives, or are they merely a rating of past ESG performance?
I think we need more work to make it clear what these ratings are and what they mean.
What do you think our nation's near-term energy strategy should be in terms of traditional energy sources like oil and gas?
We aren't getting this one right. The world needs 100 million barrels effectively of oil and gas every day, and we're going to need it for 10 years. To do that, we need proper investing in the oil and gas complex. Investing in the oil and gas complex is good for reducing CO2, because what you've all seen is that because of the high price of oil and gas, particularly for the rest of the world, you've seen everyone going back to coal. Not just poor nations like India and China, Indonesia and Vietnam, but wealthy nations like Germany, France, and the Netherlands. CO2 is getting worse. We need to have proper rules and regulations and government policy to have an effective transition to reduce CO2, keeping energy secure. We've all learned that energy supply globally is not secure, is still precarious. The United States is self-sufficient. We use and produce 10 million barrels of oil a day. Many countries don't, and their sense of energy insecurity is enormous, and it is quite dangerous for them. And you see that in Germany and the war of Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you for that frank response. My time has expired and I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.